From Wall Street to Main Street to help small business owners have the same capital as corporate America and give them the same resources as a larger company. We cover business funding, business credit, scaling, business consulting, and much more. Check out the website at shieldadvisorygroup.com. Welcome to the show, The Liquid Lunch Project.
Hey, what's up, everybody? Welcome back to another episode of the Liquid Lunch Project. I am Matthew Armihan alongside my partner, the Professor Luigi Rosabianca. What's on tap today, Lou?
Oh, Matt, you know us. We're always on the cutting edge of what's going on in the small business arena. So I don't know if you've heard the news, Matt, but New York City just gave all Airbnb business owners the eviction notice, and they're out of it. So a lot of entrepreneurs and investors here on this, listening to this podcast, are trying to figure out what's going on. So the best way to figure out is to go straight to the source. Quentin West, our guest today, he's been doing Airbnb arbitrage for quite some time. Quentin, welcome to the podcast. Kind of tell us what's the temperature right now with the Airbnb community and how are you killing it?
Yeah, definitely. So I'd say there's definitely a lot of speculation in the market right now. There's new regulations. There's a lot of competition. The reason why we're killing it right now is we're not targeting big hotspot areas. So everybody right now is teaching people to go into Dallas, which just put out new regulations to outlaw Airbnb and single family. And they're teaching to go to Austin, Phoenix, Arizona, all these big hotspot cities where there's so much competition. And we're doing the exact opposite. We're targeting small niche cities outside of major hotspots so that we don't have as much regulation, we don't have as much competition, the rent's cheaper, and there's more profits.
So you're staying underneath the radar. So guys like you and Matt are Airbnb experts, but schmucks like me have no idea what Airbnb arbitrage is. Could kind of walk us through what that means so that everyone else can kind of catch up, please?
Yeah, definitely. So the word arbitrage simply means you're taking one product, purchasing it for one price, increasing the value in some way, and selling it for a higher price. So with arbitrage, we're renting a place for 12 to 18 months, and then we're putting it on Airbnb and subleasing it to other people, guests traveling to the market, and we're able to charge a higher nightly rate and make that difference in money.
So, Quentin, we met a couple of years back in Fort Lauderdale, and you were doing this at the time, and you were telling me about it. I never really heard of this before. And then all of a sudden, it started popping up everywhere. Everybody started talking about it. I couldn't understand the concept and wrap it around my head, right? Because I was actually in the process of purchasing an Airbnb at that time. And, you know, if you're doing it for an Airbnb to go buy a property, there's a lot of financial risk in it, right? Especially if you're in a market like Dallas that just decides, over a couple months that, we don't want Airbnb anymore. Now you're stuck with that property. And if the numbers don't pencil out on the long-term side, you're pretty much screwed. So how did you get in the arbitrage game? Where did it come from? Start us from the beginning.
Yeah, so from the beginning, arbitrage definitely wasn't my original plan. I actually got into Airbnb by an accident. I was about 60 days away from losing my house in the foreclosure. I just quit my job in construction a few months prior, and real estate sales didn't pick up like I thought it would. So a friend of mine briefly mentioned that he was Airbnb-ing his property. And so I thought, I've already got the furniture there. All I got to do is move my clothes out and I can list this thing on Airbnb. Maybe it'll save me from foreclosure. Maybe I can keep my house. And so I moved back in with mom and dad. I put the place on Airbnb, and the very first month, I didn't just make my mortgage. I profited $1,000. The second month, I profited $1,500. And it kept going like that for 2 or 3 months. And, I think I was 21 at the time. I didn't have great credit. I didn't have a ton of money. So my options were pretty limited. I couldn't just go buy another house. So instead, I started researching online how to buy a house, no money down, how to do like subject to and all these crazy terms that real estate investors throw around. But the one thing that caught on was a guy was talking about arbitrage, where you can rent a place and then sublease it on Airbnb. And I didn't even finish that video. Like, I went straight to Zillow. I found a property very similar to mine for around the same cost. I reached out. I told them, hey, like, this is the deal. I'm going to Airbnb your property. You're going to get paid every month. We're going to take care of the place. Like, it's all going to be good. Everybody's going to make money. And the first one didn't work out. But over the next week, I eventually got to the table over coffee with an owner, and he agreed to the terms. We signed the lease. And 30 days later, I was making money with that second property doing arbitrage. So I proved that, the concept actually worked and it could work for me.
That's awesome, man. So what year was that? What year did you start?
So I started my first unit that I owned, the house I was living in. That was November 2019. And then the arbitrage unit was in March 2020.
Wow. That's awesome, dude, because right now you're sitting on what, about 39 units that you have?
Yeah, 39 units. We're averaging around 100 to 130,000 a month.
Nice. Is that profit or is that revenue?
That's gross revenue. Gross revenue. So we're like 38% profit margins. So not too bad.
That's awesome. So sitting down with an owner that thinks he's going to rent this house out long term, what does that conversation look like?
Yeah. So the original objections that you get is, I don't want this place to turn into a party house. I hear all these crazy stories about Airbnb guests, and it's just really not that way. Like it doesn't happen as often as people would think. And when it does, we do have things in place like insurance and deposits and things like that to protect against it. But our average guests are traveling nurses, they're insurance claims for victims of fire and flood, they're corporate travelers. So we really have a lot of respectable and people that are going to come and take care of the place instead of just a bunch of party animals that want to come destroy the house. So, we answer a couple of their questions. We talk about our guests. We talk about some things that we do to provide more value. One of the biggest things is we're renting with a long-term relationship in mind. So if anybody in the real estate industry, they know that turnover is their biggest expense. So if we can rent for 3, 4, 5 years from the same landlord, that's going to save them a month of rent every single year at the bare minimum, because it's going to take time to get in and paint the place, replace carpets, and then find a new tenant. So if we're renting the place for $1,500 and we rent it for 3 years, then that's a minimum of $4,500 we're going to save them. Not to mention the headaches from us taking care of repairs and managing all those things that the landlord typically would do themselves.
Yeah, I mean, that's a big upside as a landlord, right? Because you're turning the place over constantly, right? Yep. So you need to make sure that people still want to rent this place. So it's got to be in tip-top shape, right? Nobody's going to go in there if you let this thing fall apart. So, I mean, that is a big benefit that I think of it that way. It's actually funny when I have an Airbnb down in South Florida, and you never know who's going to contact you off there, right? So we had John Walsh, remember America's Most Wanted? He had a new TV show that came out called In Pursuit, and they called us up. We had to sign some papers, but they shot that inside my Airbnb down there. So
that's pretty awesome.
Yeah. So, you came from construction, you moved into Airbnb, you've seen this arbitrage thing. What are some of the biggest hurdles that you had to overcome to actually really start making money in the business?
Yeah, I mean, the biggest one starting out is just knowing how to manage an Airbnb business, how to keep good guest relationships and also neighborhood relationships. So the first property I ever had, probably by the 5th or 6th month, I was getting threats from neighbors trying to shut us down. I was getting letters from the city trying to shut us down, all because we were getting people coming in that like they were booking the place way too cheap, or they were booking it for one night, and we just didn't know how to screen guests. So there was no process there. And that's like a huge learning curve for anybody starting out, is just knowing how to screen guests, what to look for. So I'd say that was the biggest thing. I mean, I almost quit the entire business in the beginning because I was getting so much backlash over the 1 or 2 guests we would get a month that were not great guests. And we don't have problems like that now because we know how to screen guests, and there's things that you can look for to avoid those kind of problems. But that was probably the biggest thing starting out, and also scaling in a healthy way. And I think this is true with any business. Like there's a healthy and an unhealthy way to scale. If you're maxing out credit cards and spending every single dollar on growing the business, which I was guilty of at the time, it's really puts you in a vulnerable position. If you have a slow month and you just spent all your money on opening up a new property, you have nothing in reserves, who's going to pay your rent? And so those were the kind of problems I was coming into early on because nobody had taught me how to run a business. I was 21 years old, and this was like really the first thing I ever did that actually made money.
Yeah, managing momentum in any business is actually crucial to the business's success.
Yeah.
Growing too fast, everybody wants to grow, but if you grow too fast, it can be detrimental to the business itself.
Yes.
So
absolutely.
You mentioned earlier that you don't go into the hot markets, right? It's like Dallas. I'm sure you're not in Miami or New York that got shut down recently, LA, pretty much the vacation spots. So what spots and areas do you look in? What geographic locations?
Yeah, so I wouldn't say we have a specific area, but there's a key indicator, and we call it the golden triangle. So basically, if you can picture a triangle, it's got three sides, 3 points. At each point, you want to look for like something like an amusement park or a international airport or some kind of big landmark. Like nearby us, we have the Smoky Mountains. So look for something like that and find a place in the middle that's about 30 minutes away from those three spots. So like for us, we're located in Winston-Salem, North Carolina, where we've got several airports nearby us, but we're also close to Charlotte Airport. We're close to Raleigh. We have Concord. We have all these major cities around us. We also have big hospitals, so we have a lot of traffic back and forth from people doing the residency for the hospital. So when you look for spots like that have traffic from so many sources, you're going to have no problem booking your place, especially if you do some things to make it stand out, like add nicer amenities or nicer furniture or create some kind of theme that really attracts people coming to the area. But like I built my entire business from a small town of 25,000 people. So you really don't need a huge market to be super successful. You just need the traffic.
You've not just done this with Airbnb, but you've done this with your own warehouse, right? So tell us about how you pulled that off.
Yeah, so that one honestly was unintentional. I had planned on getting into the furniture business because we were opening up so many units, and my goal was eventually to have 100 units by the end of the next 6 to 12 months. And that's kind of going back into the growing too fast side of things. But eventually we kind of hit a slowdown. And what was going on was we were so focused on getting new units that we were losing track of our older ones. So the quality was going down, the cleaning ratings were going down, guests were unhappy. And so our business started struggling because I was so focused on the future instead of the present. And so I ended up renting this warehouse for $6,000, and now I wasn't planning on doing the furniture business anymore. I didn't even have the funding for it. And so I figured, we're successful in the Airbnb industry. Why not try to do it with this warehouse I just rented? And so that's exactly what we did. We put probably $10,000 in renovations into the warehouse, updated the HVAC system, threw some paint on, renovated the bathrooms, and then put it up for rent $4,000 over what we were leasing it for. And within 60 days, we signed a 2-year lease. And so we're doing basically the exact same thing we're doing with Airbnb in the commercial real estate space. So we lease this place for $6,000 a month. We sublease it for 10, and then we make that spread of $4,000 a month. But the great thing is we don't have to do any cleanings. We don't have to do repairs. It's a commercial tenant. They take care of everything themselves.
Yeah, that's awesome. So are you seeing a lot of activity in the commercial space right now?
I've been told that it's getting more popular, and I've strongly considered focusing more time on it. It's just when you got so many irons in the fire, it's hard to devote something that is not within your expertise. I mean, commercial real estate, I'd have to learn the market over again, and it's a whole different industry.
Nice. And you're also helping people. You have a couple of different coaching programs on how to get people into we say Airbnb, but are we just talking about Airbnb? Are you only focused on Airbnb, or is it just a short-term rental space, right? Are we using VRBO and Furnish Finder and every other product out there?
Yeah, so short-term rental is what we focus on. Airbnb is just the main platform that we use. So we list primarily on Airbnb. We use VRBO as a secondary source, and then we do a lot of direct bookings too with insurance claims.
Okay, so explain that to us. What do you mean direct bookings by insurance claims?
So if we have an insurance guest that needs a 3 to 12 month stay, we'll book them directly. That way it's cheaper for them. They don't have to pay the Airbnb or VRBO fees. And we also make more money because we don't pay fees on our end. And so it kind of works out great for everyone. And you also have more flexibility as a host, and your money's not held by Airbnb. So it really works out where you can make more money and you can make it faster, because like with longer term stays on Airbnb, they pay you back. They pay you out every 30 days. But an insurance claim, they'll usually pay all up front. So, and it also is great with arbitrage because we have flexibility. So to give you kind of some background on what I mean, we had an insurance guest inquire about one of our properties. We didn't have availability for what they needed. It was a 14-month stay. And so instead of just turning them away, I asked exactly what they needed, and I went and found a property within that week. I signed a lease 2 weeks from the day that they inquired about it. I had it furnished. I invested $12,000, and by the end of the 2 weeks, I was holding a $52,000 check.
Wow!
So they paid all up front.
So, through my experience with Airbnb, and it's been nothing like yours. It's really small. I've had a lot of people reach out to me and say, can we not go through the platform? But everything that I've read about that seems to be, there's a lot of scams out there. So what are some things that people should watch out for?
Yeah, so if they don't have reviews, that's the first indicator. We'll never accept an outside booking if you don't have reviews on the platform. And then if it's a shorter term stay, it's usually not worth it for us. If it's like a 3 to 6 month stay where we know we're going to get paid up front, we'll do that all day long, because we're also collecting a security deposit. And we also have like rights as a landlord because it's a longer than 30-day stay. And something you also have to be careful with, anything over 30 days, typically the guest now has tenancy rights under tenancy law. So if they're booked on Airbnb and they don't check out, now you have a lawsuit. And if you don't have a lease signed with them that explains exactly what the terms were, then it might be a problem for you. So that's why we always try to sign a lease with anybody that's booking longer than 30 days. So we have that as a backup for security for our company in case they don't check out.
That's good to know. And listen, I learn stuff every single day, and I guess it depends on what state you're in too, right?
Yeah,
so you always look into those laws. I've had some really interesting guests with my Airbnb. Listen, it's all great when we're making money with it, but sometimes I think somebody had a seance in one of my Airbnbs, and they shaved a cat, and it was ash all over the place when the cleaners went in there. So I got horror stories all day long. So it's great when we're making money, but tell us about some of the horror stories, some of the funny moments that you ran into while in this process.
Yeah, definitely. So probably one of the funniest ones was with my initial property. And this was kind of a really crazy experience because they had 5 people come in, and we have a Ring camera on the outside, and we could hear them counting down from the inside. Like they were talking that loudly. And they were playing like drunk hide and seek or something in the house. And we have noise monitors as well, so that we don't interrupt the neighbors or cause any kind of disturbance. And they were setting it off from the inside. So we knew something was going on, and we sent them several reminders like, hey, keep it down. because like we don't want to, give anybody a bad experience, but we also don't want bad experience for our neighbors and a disturbance. So anyway, the next morning after I heard them counting down and they're obviously playing hide and seek, I look back on the camera and early in the morning, like 9, 10 a.m., they were hauling in a piece of sheetrock and some tools. And so, I'm like, okay, like somebody threw something and put a hole in the wall or something small, and they're just trying to fix it. So I called the police and had them meet me over at the house because obviously I'm going to evict them because they're tearing up the house. And they come to the door and I'm like, okay, we saw you bring the sheetrock into the house. What happened? And she just says, come in and see for yourself. And that's never a good sign. So I come into the living room and they had fallen through the ceiling.
What?
They were playing hide and seek in the attic. These mid-20s, early 30s kids. And I just had no words. And the hole was probably at least 4 by 8. And they had brought in this, what looked like a scrap piece of sheetrock with a Black & Decker plug-in drill, and obviously had no experience fixing a hole like this. And they thought they were going to fix it themselves. But anyway, needless to say, they got thrown out that day, and we fixed it. It took my guy maybe 3 hours to fix it, and we were good to go. But that was a pretty crazy story.
Yeah, cameras definitely are a plus. My very first guest that I had, I was actually in Dallas at an Apex event. My wife was traveling, so she wasn't around, but we're still 3 hours away from this thing anyway, so there's really no way for us to get down there. Luckily enough, we met somebody, not a property manager, but I guess they're called a house watcher, right? So you just call them, they can run over there, which is actually, they're an awesome couple out of South Florida, and they do this because there's a lot of seasonal rentals there. So anyway, I get a phone call. The place is brand new. There's all new furniture in there, right? So we had somebody come in and we bought one of the beds. Every bed came from a furniture store except one bed. It came from Wayfair. They put it together. Get a phone call, the bed broke. I'm like, what? What are we supposed to do? I'm freaking out. I didn't know what to do. We wound up figuring it out, giving them some money back and apologizing. But the first guest that you have to call up and say the bed broke is really not a good start.
Yeah. That'll bum you out, the first guest.
Oh man. So what's next, brother? I know you got this amazing mastermind mansion retreat going on. So why don't you tell the audience a little bit about that?
Yeah. So November 30th through December 3rd, we're meeting in Asheville, North Carolina. We got space for 25 people. I think we've probably got 15 more spots. We've got 10 speakers coming out to talk about making money, where to put your money, whether it's real estate, stocks, futures, basically everything that you need to level up in your health, your wealth, and your mindset. So anybody that's interested in getting to the next level, if they want a network of people that can help them do that, this is an event that's really going to blow the top off things.
Yeah, you have some awesome speakers going to that thing. A lot of people that we know, that are in our network. So you're going to help a lot of people out with that one. Where can they actually find the details for that event? Why don't you tell them?
Yeah, so it's capitalconnectionevent.com/capital-castle. And I'm sure you can link that below.
Yeah, we'll throw it in the show notes 100% for you. So why don't you tell everybody where they can find you too, while we're on the subject? On the socials?
Yeah, Instagram's the best way to reach out. My handle's Q Deals Homes. So if you need help with real estate, Airbnb, or making money in general, feel free to reach out. I'll be happy to help any way I can.
So you started off in construction, weren't doing well. Decided that you're going to try your hand in the Airbnb business. Flash forward to today. We got 39 rental properties out there. You're helping others learn how to do this. You're putting on a mastermind for over 25 people with some of the best speakers that we know. What's next? What's 3.0 look like for Quentin?
Yeah, 3.0 is definitely continuing to build my brand, just like we're doing here. Continue to get them in front of more people so we can help more people, get on more stages, get more speaking engagements, but also get more real estate. I mean, the whole end goal to all of this was to get 10,000 units of multifamily. The beginning, starting out, was just to make more money. That's what I've been doing with the arbitrage for the past 4 years. I knew I needed that cash flow machine to, one, replace my 9 to 5 job, give me more freedom, but also give me a tool that I could then invest into real estate and not have a $3,000 to $5,000 a month 9 to 5 income to try to throw in a multifamily. Like, all this, everything that I've been building up the past 4 years has all been a stepping stone to the next thing.
I love that. So you're building this cash flow machine right now, and you're using it as your springboard to the next level. Now,
Exactly.
multifamily has been a little bit tough right now. Have you been looking at that market? Have you been following the trends?
Yeah, a little bit. It definitely looks pretty tough, especially with the new interest rates that they've got, and a lot of people's terms are ending. So I think a lot of people are in some kind of financial situations where they planned on refinancing, and now it doesn't make sense because the interest rates are so high. So I think we're actually going to see some deals come up here in the near future because people can't refinance. So what do you think about that?
No, I totally agree with you. I think, yeah. So for the audience, if you don't know, generally commercial loans don't work the same way as residential loans. They don't go out 30 years. They usually refinance in 7 to 10 years. And we're coming up on that. So if you had a rate in threes right now, the fours even, well, when you come to refinance these days, it's going to be in the nines and tens, and you just may not be able to hold the property because there's just not enough cash flow coming in. So a lot of these people are going to be forced to sell them at lower valuations than what they bought them for. And I think there will be an opportunity there. I just think you got to have a nice war chest of cash ready to deploy, right? Because I think eventually rates will go back down.
Hey, Quentin, there's a lot of people in the audience we know that are contemplating that transition from 9 to 5 to running your own shop or being a gig worker. Kind of walk us through some tips that you can share with everyone on maintaining that diligence, right? Like, you need accountability. Otherwise, you're eating chips on the sofa all day. So walk us through how you got over that transition from that 9 to 5 routine to running your own shop.
Yeah, I mean, honestly, that was probably a super hard thing for me because, I got to the point where I could quit my job, and I probably quit too early. And I was kind of in a position where I didn't have a lot of work in front of me. I only had 4 or 5 units, so I could live off of that, but it wasn't enough for me to grow. And so I would say the most important thing is just to have an end goal in mind, whether it's a 3-year goal, a 5-year goal, whatever it may be. And that will give you some kind of motivation going forward. I was at the point where I didn't have work in front of me. I didn't have future plans, and I had money coming in. That's kind of a dangerous combination because, when you're waking up at 10 o'clock, 11 o'clock in the afternoon, and you don't know what you're going to do in the day, there's no motivation to do anything. And so you never accomplish anything, and 6 to 12 months go by. So I think definitely the goal setting is the key thing. Figure out what you want to accomplish and then kind of reconstruct that goal back to where you are now. So the breaking point for me was when I finally figured that out, that, I wanted to get to this crazy goal of 10,000 multifamily units. To do that, I need this much cash flow coming in. To get that much cash flow, I've got to do this. To get there, I need to first start here with what I've got. So I've got this Airbnb business. I know how to do it. I know how to scale it. I need to get to 50 grand a month in cash flow. And that's what I've been doing the past 4 years, working towards that goal so that I'm not growing a multifamily portfolio over the next 20 years. It can take me 10 instead.
Awesome. So, Quentin, we really are respectful of your time. We appreciate you being here. I do have one question for you before I do let you run. If you could only pick one market right now in the U.S. to keep going with for this Airbnb arbitrage, which one would it be?
Honestly, I would say Charlotte, North Carolina. I think, a super underappreciated market for one. It's not too small, but it's not too big. It's got some other great markets on the outskirts like Weddington and other smaller markets where you can spread out into and not have as high rental rates, but the profits are pretty insane. And I'm sure that will end up going down over time as more people flood the markets, and it may turn into a Phoenix or a Dallas situation. But ultimately, arbitrage should be like your next plan or your next step to get to longer term passive income, like multifamily, Section 8, something like that that's more stable. I'll never teach this as a end all be all retirement plan because it's just not that. It's not stable enough to depend on for the next 30 years. So keep that in mind when you're going in. Like, this is a cash flow play. And you do have low risk. You do have a lot of options, but don't put yourself in a position where if tomorrow your market outlaws Airbnb, like all your income's gone. And that's one reason why we spread out into 5 or 6 different markets, because we have that flexibility now.
Great. Quentin, thanks so much, man. We really appreciate you being here. Guys, that's a wrap of the Liquid Lunch Project. We'll see you in the next episode.
Thank you for listening to the show. And make sure you subscribe, leave a review, and share it with a friend. We'll see you on the next episode of the Liquid Lunch Project.